My name is Amara Jenkins, and I am the 28-year-old black sheep of my prominent Atlanta family. 2 days ago, we buried my beloved grandparents Elias and Loretta Bishop. Today, we sat in their lawyer's office, the air thick with fake grief and real greed. My father, Pastor Marcus Jenkins, adjusted his suit, ready to absorb their estate into his ministry. My brother Jamal and his wife Tiffany were already whispering about the cars they would buy. They all looked at me, the disappointment, with pity. Then the lawyer, Mr. Strickland, cleared his throat and read the will. $30 million. All of it. To me. The silence was absolute. But as I watched their faces twist from greed to pure rage, I knew the truth. This 30 million was just a test. And they were all about to fail. Before I continue, let me know in the comments where you are watching from tonight. And if you have ever been the one person in the family who sees the truth, hit that like button and subscribe. You are going to want to see what happens next. The heavy silence in Mr. Strickland's office was broken by a sound. A sharp, high-pitched gasp. It came from Tiffany, my brother Jamal's white wife. Her perfectly manicured hand flew to her chest, her blue eyes wide, not with sadness, but with a kind of violent arithmetic. She was calculating. What did he just say? Tiffany's voice was a whisper, but it cut through the room like a knife. She wasn't looking at the lawyer, she was staring at me. My father, Pastor Marcus Jenkins, was a man who built his life on the illusion of control. He sat frozen, his hands clasped on the mahogany table, his knuckles white. The mask of the grieving son had shattered, replaced by pure, unfiltered shock. "Strickland," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "There must be a mistake. Read it again." Mr. Strickland, an old friend of my grandparents, didn't flinch. He was a small, precise man, and he seemed to have been expecting this. He simply adjusted his glasses. "There is no mistake, Pastor Jenkins. The will is clear, executed last month and witnessed by 3 independent parties. To our granddaughter Amara Jenkins, we leave the entirety of our public estate, valued at an estimated $30 million. We trust she will know what to do with it." 30 million, Jamal, my brother, finally spoke. He was a large man who had coasted on my father's reputation his entire life. He looked at me, his eyes blank with confusion, like a dog who had just been told it could no longer sit on the couch. For Amara, but she works at a library. She doesn't even own a house," Tiffany burst out, her voice rising to a shriek. "She lives with you." She pointed a finger at my father, then at me. "This is insane. They were old. She must have tricked them. She manipulated them." "Mrs. Jenkins," Mr. Strickland said calmly, "I can assure you Elias and Loretta Bishop were of perfectly sound mind. I spoke with them myself." Sound mind. My mother Brenda finally found her voice. She had been dabbing at dry eyes with a silk handkerchief for 2 days. Now her face was a mask of ugly disbelief. "They left us nothing. They left their son nothing. The man who runs the church. The man who held their hands." I remembered it differently. I remembered how my father hadn't visited his parents for the last 6 months of their lives, not since Pop Elias had called him out during Sunday dinner. "A man's ministry starts at home, Marcus," my grandfather had said, his voice quiet but firm. "And your home seems to be built on shaking down your congregation for a new Lexus." My father had stormed out, and my mother had followed, calling her own parents ungrateful old fools. I was the one who visited. I was the one who brought them their groceries, who sat with Big Mama Loretta while she watched her gardening shows, who listened to Pop's stories about building his business from nothing. "They left me nothing," Brenda wailed, the fake tears now becoming real tears of rage. "After all I did for them." "This is a joke," Jamal muttered, shaking his head. "A cruel joke. Amara, you're not going to accept this." He turned to me, trying to put on the big brother face he used when he wanted something. "You know this isn't right. You'll sign it over. We'll split it the way it's supposed to be. 4 ways. 4 ways, Tiffany scoffed, looking at her own husband with contempt. You mean 3 ways? She doesn't get a full share? She's the reason for this mess. And there it was, the black sheep, the disappointment, the girl who was never really family. I was the child of my mother's estranged sister taken in at age 5 when my birth mother passed away, a charity case. Charity, a prop for my father's sermons on community and grace. I had sat silent this whole time. I let the storm break around me. I watched the masks of my family melt away, revealing the rot underneath. I watched my father, the pastor, look at me with calculation. I watched my mother, the deaconess, look at me with hatred. I watched my brother, the golden child, and his wife, the perfect daughter-in-law, look at me like I had just stolen the food from their mouths. I finally turned my head very slowly and looked at Mr. Strickland. He was watching me, his eyes sad but steady. He knew. My grandparents had known. This whole thing, this $30 million, it wasn't just an inheritance. It was a weapon. It was a test. And it was a shield. I took a deep breath. Then I turned to my father. Pastor Jenkins. I said, my voice clear and cold. He flinched. I had never used that tone before. The will is the will. I will be honoring my grandparents' wishes. Amara, my father began, his voice dropping into the smooth, intimidating tone he used from the pulpit. You need to think very clearly. No! Tiffany suddenly shrieked, standing up so fast her chair screeched on the floor. You don't get to talk, you worthless library girl. You think you can just take our money. That money is ours. It belongs to the Jenkins family. She lunged, not at me, but at the papers on Mr. Strickland's desk. She grabbed the original copy of the will. I'll fix this, she screamed and began to tear it in half. Mr. Strickland didn't even stand up. He just sighed. That's a copy, Mrs. Jenkins. The original is filed with the court, and I have security footage of this entire meeting. Tiffany froze, the torn paper in her hands. My mother, Brenda, looked like she was going to faint. My father, Marcus, closed his eyes, a vein throbbing in his temple. Jamal just looked at me. You did this, he whispered. You did this to us. I stood up, smoothing my simple black dress. No, Jamal, I said, picking up my purse. You did this to yourselves. Mr. Strickland, I'll be in touch tomorrow to discuss the next steps. I walked out of the office, leaving them all there, sitting in the ruins of their own greed. I thought that was the end of it. I was so wrong. That night, the real battle began. I drove back to my parents' house in a daze, the $30 million figure echoing in my head. It wasn't joy I felt. It was the heavy, cold certainty of a coming storm. I walked into the house, the same house where I had always been the invisible girl, the charity case. The air was already different. It was still but electric, like the air before a tornado. I went straight to my childhood bedroom, the one with the faded wallpaper and the single bed, and pulled out an old duffel bag. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew I could not stay there. I was folding a pair of jeans when the door burst open. I didn't even flinch. All 4 of them stood there blocking the exit. My father Marcus, my mother Brenda, my brother Jamal, and his wife Tiffany. They didn't look like a family. They looked like a pack of wolves that had cornered their prey. My father stepped inside first. He closed the door behind him with a soft, final click. He was in full Pastor Jenkins mode, his face arranged in lines of false paternal concern. He even clasped his hands in front of him as if in prayer. Amara. He began, his voice a smooth, deep baritone, the voice he used to charm thousands of dollars from the congregation. We were all emotional today. Things were said. But we are a family, and God has seen fit to bless this family. He walked over to my small desk, pushing aside my library books. This $30 million. It's a test from the Lord, you see. He is testing our humility. He is testing our devotion to His work. What do you want, Marcus? I asked, my voice flat. I didn't call him Dad, not now. He smiled a tight, cold smile. I'm glad you asked. I've already spoken to the church's lawyers. They've drawn up the paperwork. It's very simple. You just sign the inheritance over to the new Bishop Family Community Fund. It will be managed by the church. By me. For the good of the community, of course. We are going to do such great works, all thanks to your grandparents' generosity. He slid a thick sheaf of papers onto my bed, on top of my half-packed clothes. Just sign this, Amara, and we can put this whole ugly day behind us. We can be a family again. I looked at the papers, then back at his expectant face. I said nothing. I just picked up a t-shirt and continued folding. His smile faltered. That's when my mother Brenda lunged forward. The mask of the grieving daughter was gone. Her face was red and blotchy, her eyes narrowed to slits. "You ungrateful, selfish child!" she shrieked, her voice cracking. "After we took you in, we fed you, we clothed you, we gave you a roof over your head when your own mother died, and this is how you repay us." She grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "I am your mother. You owe me. You think you can just sit on $30 million while your own parents, your own mother, lives in this tiny cramped house while your father works his fingers to the bone for the Lord. You are a serpent, a viper, you are just like her." Her was my biological mother, her sister whom she'd despised. I looked at Brenda's face, twisted in rage, and suddenly I wasn't in my bedroom anymore. I was 18 again. I was holding a thick envelope, my hands shaking, a full scholarship to Howard University. A new life, a way out. Brenda had found me holding it in the kitchen. She didn't say a word. She just smiled, took the letter from my hands, and ripped it into 4 perfect squares. "Good daughters stay home and serve their family," she had whispered, dropping the pieces into the trash. "You don't need all those big, foolish ideas." Now she wanted $30 million for the life she had tried to trap me in. "Let go of me," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. I pulled my arm from her grasp. "Or what?" Jamal, my brother, sneered from the doorway. He was a large man, soft from a life of no consequences. "You'll call the cops. Don't be stupid, Amara." He stepped forward, nudging his wife Tiffany in front of him like a shield. Tiffany, who had been silent, put on a performance. She clutched her pregnant belly, her face a mask of fragile white motherhood. "Amara, please," she said, her voice trembling. "Don't do this to us. To me." She looked up, tears welling in her eyes. "Jamal and we were counting on this. We need a bigger house, for the baby. My baby can't grow up in that tiny apartment. We have plans." Jamal nodded eagerly. "That's right, Amara. I've got all these great business ideas. Big ideas. But I just need capital. You wouldn't understand working at a library. This is real-world stuff. You're hoarding blessings that money is useless to you." "We need it," Tiffany insisted. "It's our right. It's your nephew's right. You wouldn't deny your own family, would you? You wouldn't steal from a baby." The 4 of them closed in. My father with his false piety, my mother with her venomous guilt, my brother with his pathetic entitlement, and my sister-in-law with her manipulative, unborn child. They formed a circle around me in the tiny room. The air was thick and suffocating. "Sign the papers, Amara," my father commanded, pointing to the documents. "Don't be selfish, Amara," my mother hissed. "Just do it, Amara," Jamal whined. "It's not like you deserve it anyway." "Think of the baby," Tiffany whispered, her hand rubbing her stomach. I stood up slowly. My duffel bag was half packed. The papers sat on my bed, a contract for my silence, for my submission. For $30 million, they were willing to tear me to pieces. But my grandparents had known. They knew exactly who these people were. And they had trusted me. I looked at my father. I looked at my mother. I looked at my brother and his wife. I really saw them for the first time. Not as family, but as strangers. Strangers who wanted to rob me. I picked up the heavy stack of papers. They all smiled. A collective sigh of relief. Tiffany's fake tears vanished. My father's smile widened. "I'm glad you've seen sense, daughter." I held his gaze. And then very calmly, I tore the stack of papers in half. And then in half again. The sound of ripping paper was the only sound in the room. "No," I said. The silence that followed was terrifying. It was the sound of four worlds breaking. My father's face went from pastoral calm to a deep dark purple. Brenda's mouth opened in a silent scream. Jamal just looked confused, but it was Tiffany who reacted first. You witch!" she screamed. My father raised his hand. Not to me. He raised it to stop his wife, to stop his daughter-in-law. His eyes were no longer the eyes of a pastor. They were the eyes of a predator. "Brenda," he said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "Jamal, get her out of my house." The sound of the paper tearing was the only sound in the room. It was louder than a gunshot. It was the sound of the final no I had held inside for 23 years. For a second, all four of them were frozen in a horrible tableau of greed. My father's face, Pastor Marcus, was turning a deep, dark, mottled purple. My mother Brenda's hand was at her pearls, her mouth open in a silent scream of disbelief. Jamal just looked confused, as if his brain simply could not compute the image of me, Amara, the quiet one, the doormat defying them all. It was Tiffany who broke the spell. You stupid witch!" she shrieked, her voice high and cracking. "Do you know what you just did? You just destroyed this family." My father raised his hand. Not to strike me. He raised it to silence Tiffany. The air in the room went ice cold. His eyes, the eyes of the benevolent pastor, the loving father, the community leader, were gone. They were flat, dead. They were the eyes of a king whose most pathetic subject had just spat on his throne. The illusion of family didn't just crack, it disintegrated. He did not look at me, he looked at my brother. "Jamal." His voice was terrifyingly calm. Jamal, startled by the tone, straightened up. "Yeah, Pop." "Get her out of my house." Jamal blinked. "What, like, right now?" My mother Brenda suddenly understood the finality of what was happening. She rushed forward, grabbing my father's arm. "Marcus, no! Wait!" she hissed, her eyes wide with panic. "The money. If we kick her out, we'll never get the money. She's just being emotional. She'll calm down." My father turned his dead eyes on his wife. "You fool!" he whispered, his voice dripping with contempt. "Don't you see? There is no money. Not for us. She was never going to give it. This thing," he motioned to me, "has been lying to us. She has been playing us. She has shown her true colors. She is not my daughter. She is not family." He turned back to Jamal, his voice rising to a command. I said, "Get her out." This was the moment my brother Jamal had been waiting for his entire life. The permission, the chance to finally physically put me in my place. A slow, ugly smile spread across his face. "My pleasure, Pop." He lunged at me. He grabbed my upper arm, the same one my mother had clawed, and yanked me so hard I stumbled out of the bedroom. My shoulder hit the wall. "My bag," I said, trying to reach back for the one duffel bag I owned. "You get nothing!" Tiffany shrieked, darting in front of me like a vulture. She grabbed my duffel bag, unzipped it, and with a triumphant cry turned it upside down. My few pairs of jeans, my t-shirts, my books, they scattered across the hallway floor. "This is our house. These are our things. You don't get to take anything." Jamal didn't care about the clothes. He just wanted the violence. He grabbed my shoulders from behind and pushed me. "Get out, Amara!" You heard him. "Get out of our house!" He shoved me hard again and again. I stumbled down the hallway, catching myself on the walls. My mother and Tiffany followed behind, a chorus of abuse. "Ungrateful!" my mother screamed. "Worthless!" Tiffany yelled. "Just like your real mother!" Brenda shrieked. That one was meant to cut, and it did. They reached the front door. Jamal ripped it open. The cool night air hit my face. It had started to rain, a cold, stinging Atlanta drizzle. "And don't ever come back," Jamal bellowed. He gathered his strength, and with one final massive shove, he pushed me with all his weight. I flew out of the doorway. I couldn't catch my balance. I stumbled off the porch, landing hard on my hands and knees in the wet grass, the mud instantly soaking through my jeans. I looked up, breathing hard. The four of them stood in the doorway, framed in the warm yellow light of the home I had served for 2 decades. They looked down at me, kneeling in the mud like I was a piece of trash they had finally managed to take out. Then my father, Pastor Marcus Jenkins, stepped forward and slammed the heavy oak door. The sound echoed in the quiet suburban street. The deadbolt clicked. I was alone. I was kneeling in the mud. It was dark. The rain was cold, plastering my hair to my face. I could hear them faintly through the door, laughing, a high-pitched, hysterical shriek of triumph from Tiffany. They thought they had won. They thought I was broken. They pictured me the 28-year-old librarian with no job, no money, and nowhere to go. They thought I would be curled up on the doormat by morning, begging for forgiveness, ready to sign anything just to get back inside into the cold, familiar misery. I stayed kneeling on the grass for one long, quiet moment. I let the rain wash the feeling of their hands off my skin. I let the cold soak into my bones. Then slowly I sat back on my heels. I reached into my purse. I didn't pull out a tissue to wipe my tears. I wasn't crying. I pulled out my phone. My hands weren't even shaking. I scrolled through my contacts and pressed a number. The phone rang twice. "Mr. Strickland," a crisp, professional voice answered, wide awake. "Mr. Strickland," I said. My own voice was steady, clear. It didn't even tremble. "It's Amara Jenkins. I apologize for the late hour." The rain dripped from my chin onto the phone screen. "It's exactly as Big Mama and Pop Pop predicted," I said. "I've been removed from the house." I heard him sigh on the other end, a sound of grim satisfaction. "I see, my dear. Are you safe?" I stood up. I wiped the mud from my hands onto my wet jeans. I looked back one last time at the closed door, the house that was never my home. "I'm perfectly safe, sir," I said. "I'm just calling to let you know I'll be moving into the Buckhead property tonight. Yes, I have the key Big Mama gave me. I'm heading there now." I called an Uber that night, the premium one. I didn't care about the cost. I watched the driver load my single muddy purse into the trunk of a black Escalade, the same kind of car my father always said was reserved for the truly blessed. The irony was bitter. I arrived at the gates of my grandparents' estate in Buckhead just before midnight. The house was a beautiful, sprawling white brick Georgian, a quiet statement of old money and earned dignity. It was the only place I had ever felt safe. Big Mama Loretta had given me a key years ago. "A smart woman always has a place to run to, baby," she'd said, pressing it into my palm. "Even if it's just running back to yourself." I let myself in. The house was silent, cool, and smelled of my grandmother's favorite scent, lemon polish and old books. I didn't turn on many lights. I just walked to the guest room, the room that had always been my room, and fell into the queen-size bed, still in my damp, muddy clothes. I was asleep before I could even process the day. I woke up to sunlight. Not the thin gray light that filtered through my tiny bedroom window at my parents' house, but bright golden Atlanta sunshine pouring through floor-to-ceiling windows. I was wrapped in the softest sheets I had ever felt. For a moment, I was disoriented. Then it all came back. The lawyer's office, the fight, the rain, the door slamming. I got up, showered in a bathroom made of marble, and found my grandmother's old silk robe hanging on the back of the door. It enveloped me like a hug. I went downstairs to the kitchen, a vast room with a professional stove and a granite island, and made myself a cup of coffee. I sat in the sunny breakfast nook, looking out over the perfectly maniculed gardens. I was alone. I had $30 million, and my entire family hated me. I felt a strange cold calm settle over me. I finally understood what Pop Pop Elias meant when he told me, "Peace ain't free, Amara. You gotta be willing to pay the price for it. It seemed the price was my family. I was on my second cup of coffee when I heard it. A car engine revving too hard, coming too fast. A horn honked loud and obnoxious right outside the gates. Then the sound of a car door slamming. And another. And another. Then the yelling started. Amara Jenkins, you get your ungrateful self out here." It was my mother's voice, Brenda, high-pitched and ugly. I walked calmly to the front hall, which had a small video panel for the gate. Sure enough, there they were, the whole pack. My father Marcus, my mother Brenda, my brother Jamal, and his wife Tiffany. They looked like they hadn't slept. Their clothes were wrinkled. Their faces were puffy with rage. "Open this gate, girl," my father commanded, his voice booming with the false authority of the pulpit. "You are trespassing on family property. I will have you arrested." I almost laughed. I just watched them on the tiny screen. Jamal stepped forward, jiggling something in his hand. A key. "Don't worry, Pop, I got this." He announced it loudly for my benefit. "I know where Big Mama kept the spare gate key." He fumbled with the lockbox, then triumphantly pulled out a key and jammed it into the gate's lock. It didn't turn. He jammed it in again. He twisted it harder. "It's not working," he grunted, rattling the massive iron gate. She must have done something. Of course she had. Big Mama Loretta was no fool. She'd told me she changed that lockbox code weekly because she knew Jamal snooped. The key he had was probably 10 years old. "Amara!" Tiffany shrieked, her voice going right through the intercom. "We know you're in there. You are a thief. That house, this money. It's for my baby. You're stealing from a child." This was getting tiresome. I was about to press the button to tell them to leave when a second car pulled up. A black, sleek, silent Mercedes sedan. It parked right behind their messy SUV. The driver's door opened and a man stepped out. He was not from Atlanta. You could tell in an instant. He was in his late 60s, tall and thin as a rail. He was white with a shock of silver hair brushed perfectly into place. He wore a dark three-piece Savile Row suit that probably cost more than my father's car. He held a slim alligator skin briefcase. He radiated a kind of power my father could only dream of, the quiet, effortless power of New York, old money, and Ivy League law degrees. My family stared at him. They had no idea who he was. The man walked past them, not even giving them a glance, and stood directly in front of the intercom camera. He pressed the button. I pressed talk. "Yes. Ms. Amara Jenkins." His voice was crisp like old paper. "My name is Michael Harrison. I was your grandfather's primary counsel from New York. I believe you are expecting me." "Yes, Mr. Harrison, I am," I said. "Thank you for coming on such short notice." I pressed the open button. The massive iron gates began to swing inward slowly and silently. Mr. Harrison stepped back, waiting for them to open fully. My family, however, saw their chance. "He's opening it! Go!" Marcus yelled. Jamal, Brenda, and Tiffany surged forward, pushing past the stunned Mr. Harrison and began to march up the long, curving driveway toward the house, their faces set in grim, righteous fury. They were a conquering army coming to claim their territory. I sighed. I walked to the front door, opened it, and stood on the top step, my grandmother's silk robe wrapped around me. I waited. They stormed up the steps, not even slowing down. Jamal was in the lead. "You're done, Amara," he panted. "This ends now. We're calling the police. We're calling—" He stopped. All of them stopped. They froze halfway up the steps. They had finally seen Mr. Harrison, who had walked calmly up the driveway behind them. He now stood beside me on the porch. He didn't look at them. He looked at the house with an appraising eye. "A fine piece of property. Elias always had good taste," he murmured, mostly to himself. My father Marcus was the first to find his voice. He was a master at reading a room, and he knew instantly that this man was not someone he could bully. He smoothed his wrinkled suit jacket. I I don't know who you are, sir, Marcus said, trying to regain his pastor dignity. But this is a private family matter. Mr. Harrison finally turned his cold blue eyes on my father. He looked him up and down, a brief, dismissive glance. Are you Marcus Jenkins? He asked. I am Pastor Marcus Jenkins, my father corrected, puffing out his chest. I see, Harrison said. And these are the rest. He gave Brenda, Jamal, and Tiffany the same fleeting look of distaste. This is our house. Tiffany finally burst out, unable to stand the silence. Her grandparents left this for the family. She's a thief and she's trespassing. Mr. Harrison turned to me. Ms. Jenkins, did you or did you not change the locks on this property last night, as I advised? I did, Mr. Harrison, I said. And did you or did you not sign the eviction notices I had couriered to your parents' home an hour ago, informing them that their presence on this property would be considered criminal trespass? I did, Mr. Harrison, I said. Mr. Harrison nodded. He turned back to my family. Their faces had gone from angry to confused to pale. Then you are all in violation of the law, Harrison said, his voice flat. Pastor Jenkins, Mrs. Jenkins, you have 10 seconds to remove yourselves from this property. If you are not in your vehicle and off these grounds by the time I count to 10, I will be forced to call my contact, a lovely man, Chief Rollins of the Atlanta PD, who is already aware of the situation and has a car on standby just for this occasion. Marcus's jaw dropped. The chief of police. You can't do that, Brenda shrieked. We're his family. 1, Harrison said, checking his gold watch. This is ridiculous, Marcus blustered, but he took a step back. He knew that name. He knew that was a call he couldn't win. 2. You, this isn't over, Jamal stammered, pointing a finger at me. 3. You'll hear from our lawyer, Tiffany screamed, as Jamal started to pull her back down the steps. 4. They turned. They scrambled. They didn't just walk. They almost ran back down the long driveway, piling into their SUV in a disorganized panic. 5. The car door slammed. 6. The engine roared to life. 7. The SUV tore out of the gates, which were still open, and sped down the quiet, wealthy street. Mr. Harrison watched them go, his face impassive. 8. The car vanished around the corner. Silence. Mr. Harrison turned to me, a small, thin smile touching his lips. That went smoothly. A rather excitable group, aren't they? You have no idea, I said, letting out a breath I didn't know I was holding. He nodded, then tapped his alligator briefcase. Well, he said, shall we go inside and discuss the $30 million Mr. Strickland told you about? Yes, I said, leading him into the house. Thank you for that. Oh, that was nothing, he said, following me. Now about that $30 million. Your grandfather and I both agreed. It's the perfect amount to, how did he put it? See who came to dinner. Now let's talk about the real money. I led Mr. Harrison into my grandfather's study. It was a room I had always loved, paneled in dark cherry wood and smelling of old leather and pipe tobacco. It was a room of quiet, solid power. Please have a seat, I said, gesturing to one of the deep leather armchairs. I sat in the one behind Pop's massive desk. It felt right. Mr. Harrison placed his alligator briefcase on the desk, but he didn't open it. He simply steepled his fingers and looked at me, his gaze analytical but not unkind. You handled that confrontation at the gate with remarkable composure, Amara, he said. His voice was not one for small talk. Your grandparents would have been very proud. They prepared me for it, I said quietly. They knew exactly who Marcus and Brenda were. Indeed, Harrison said. Elias and Loretta Bishop were two of the shrewdest and most discreet individuals I have ever had the privilege to represent. Which brings us to the $30 million. He leaned forward slightly. As you know that 30 million is your public inheritance. It's the money held in local Atlanta banks, the deed to this house, the stock portfolio managed by Mr. Strickland. It is by all accounts a massive fortune. He paused, letting the words hang in the air. And as your grandfather so eloquently put it, it was the bait. It was just enough to see who would come to the table with a fork and who would come with a knife. I nodded. It seems they all brought knives. Precisely, Harrison said. They are fighting over the scraps. They are reacting exactly as predicted. They are so blinded by that 30 million they've failed to ask the one question your grandfather built his entire life on. What's the real story? I finished for him. A thin, satisfied smile crossed Harrison's face. He finally reached for his briefcase, clicking the gold latches. What's the real story? He repeated. Your grandparents were not just comfortable, Amara. They weren't just buckhead wealthy. They were quiet titans. He opened the case and pulled out a single thick leather-bound portfolio. He slid it across the desk to me. In 1995, your grandfather Elias took a risk. He had a friend from his old army days, a brilliant, eccentric scientist. This friend wanted to start a company in his garage, something about mapping genetic codes. It was science fiction back then. The friend needed $50,000. He tapped the portfolio. Your father, Marcus, told Elias he was a fool, that he should donate the money to the church building fund. Your grandfather instead gave his friend the $50,000, not as a loan, as an investment, in exchange for 2% of a company that didn't even have a name yet. I opened the cover. The first page was a stock certificate for a company named OmniGen Biopharmaceuticals. That company, OmniGen, Harrison said, his voice quiet, is now one of the largest pharmaceutical and genetic research corporations on the planet. That $50,000 investment, which Elias and Loretta protected and nurtured, transferring it into a series of irrevocable private trusts, is, as of the market close yesterday, worth approximately $330 million. I looked at the number on the paper. I looked at Harrison. I felt the weight of it settle on me, not as a shock, but as a final confirmation. And they left it all in trust. For you, Harrison said. With me as the executor until your 30th birthday, but with you as the sole managing director, effective on your 28th birthday, which I believe was last week. I didn't cry. I didn't gasp. I felt a cold, clear power settle into my bones. This was the true inheritance. It wasn't just money. It was justice. They knew, I whispered, tracing the embossed logo on the page. They knew I would be the only one who wouldn't waste it, who wouldn't burn it all down. Ah, Harrison said. But that's the best part, Amara. They didn't just hope you wouldn't. They trained you not to. He leaned back, a genuine smile on his face now. Did you really think your part-time job at the community library was just a coincidence? Your grandparents endowed that entire library wing. It was a place for you to be quiet, to be underestimated. To be poor little Amara, the charity case, while you were doing your real work. He pointed to a transcript on the next page. Those online finance courses you've been taking for the last 5 years, they weren't from a community college. I was the one enrolling you. You have a full certification in nonprofit management from Wharton and a master's in portfolio management from Harvard Business School online. Your grades, I must say, were exemplary. My mind was racing, connecting the dots of my own life. It had all been a long, secret education. And for the last 3 years, Harrison continued, you've been managing the Loretta Bishop Reading Fund, correct? Yes, I said. It was a small charity. Pop set it up for me to run. To learn. Harrison chuckled. Amara, that small charity is a $5 million discretionary fund. You have by yourself vetted and funded over 40 different literacy programs across 3 states. You have managed a complex stock portfolio. You have liquidated assets. And you have made million-dollar decisions all under my remote supervision. Your reports were flawless. He closed his hands on the desk. You are not a 28-year-old librarian who just inherited a fortune. You are a 28-year-old foundation manager who has been secretly and successfully directing a multi-million-dollar operation. You have been in training for this exact moment since you were 21. This is just your graduation. I finally understood. I understood the calm I'd felt, the lack of panic, the strange certainty I'd had when I stood on that porch facing them down. I wasn't a victim who got lucky. I was a quiet soldier trained by masters who had just been handed her arsenal. They just never bothered to look, I said, thinking of my family. They were so busy calling me the black sheep, the charity case. They never once asked me what I was really doing, what I was really reading. Their arrogance was your grandfather's greatest tool, Harrison said. He used their prejudice against them. Their belief that you were less than was your ultimate shield, and now it is your ultimate weapon. He stood up, walking to the window to look out at the garden. So, the 30 million is the bait. They will fight for it. They will get loud. They will get ugly. They will try to sue, to discredit you, to paint you as a manipulator of two old, senile people. And what do? I asked, standing up and joining him, the heavy portfolio in my hand. Harrison looked at me, his eyes sharp. We let them. We let them scream and kick and fight over the 30 million. We let them expose their greed and corruption to the entire world. And you will use the 330 million to dismantle them piece by piece without them even knowing who is hitting them. They think they're in a fist fight with a librarian. They have no idea they just declared war on a queen. The calm in my grandfather's study, the quiet power from the $330 million revelation lasted exactly 2 days. For 2 days I lived in the beautiful silent house. I explored my grandmother's gardens. I read in the library. I slept in a bed that didn't feel like a temporary cot. I was for the first time in my life at peace. And then, Sunday came. My family, having failed to break down my door, turned to the one weapon they had absolute mastery over: public opinion. My phone buzzed on the antique desk where I was working with Mr. Harrison, setting up the new formal agendas for the trust. It was a text from an old high school friend. Amara, what is going on? My mom just came home from church and you should probably call me. Before I could, another text came, and another, then a link. Amara, Mr. Harrison said, his voice sharp. He was looking at his own laptop. It seems your father has delivered a rather passionate sermon this morning. Harrison turned his laptop around. It was a live stream already posted to my father's church Facebook page, Beacon Light Community Church. The video had thousands of shares. The title was, "A Pastor's Pain, a Father's Prayer." I clicked play. There was my father, Marcus Jenkins, on the pulpit. Not the man in the wrinkled suit from my porch, but the pastor. He was in his finest robes, a spotlight hitting his face, a single tear rolling down his cheek. He was a master performer. Brothers and sisters, he boomed, his voice echoing with manufactured pain. I come to you today not as your pastor, but as a broken-hearted father. The congregation murmured. Amen, Pastor. The devil, he declared, does not come with horns and a pitchfork. No, he comes as a whisper. He comes as a temptation. He comes, sometimes, in the form of your own family. The camera panned to my mother Brenda in the front row, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. She was the very image of the long-suffering wife. As you know, my father continued, his voice dropping, my sainted parents passed into glory. But the enemy saw an opportunity. He has planted a seed of greed, a spirit of profound disrespect in the heart of my own child. My daughter, Amara. I felt my stomach clench. He had said my name. $30 million, he thundered. The devil offered her 30 million pieces of silver to betray her family, to betray her church, to betray her God. No, Jesus, a woman in the crowd cried out. She has taken the money that her grandparents intended for the community. This was his master stroke. The money for our new youth center, the money for the homeless shelter. She has taken God's money and hoarded it for herself. It was a blatant, monstrous lie, but they believed him. The crowd was on its feet, hands in the air condemning me. She has kicked her own mother and father out, he cried, his voice breaking. She sits in a $30 million mansion while the family that raised her, the family that took her in when she had nothing, is left with nothing. Shame, someone yelled. Shame on her. I watched horrified as my entire community, the people who had watched me grow up, the aunties and uncles who pinched my cheeks, turned on me. We must pray for her, Marcus concluded, raising his hands. We must pray that God breaks this spirit of rebellion, that he casts out this demon of greed. Pray for Amara. Pray for her lost soul, and pray for your church, which has been robbed. I slammed the laptop shut. My hands were shaking. He's painting me as a thief, I whispered. A demon. He's painting you as a threat. Harrison corrected, his voice grim. He's isolating you. He is turning your entire social structure against you. He's a very effective and very dangerous man. But the day was not over. The old guard had struck. Now it was time for the new guard. As if on cue, Mr. Harrison's phone made a soft ding. He looked at it. His face, usually so composed, tightened in disgust. "Who is Tiffany?" he asked. He handed me his phone. It was an alert he'd set up for the family name. A GoFundMe page had just gone live. It was linked from a video that was already— I looked at the view count, already at 50,000 views. It was a TikTok. I pressed play. The video was shaky, filmed in what looked like a dark, cramped apartment. The lighting was terrible. Tiffany was sitting on a lumpy couch wearing an old stained bathrobe. Her hair was a mess, her face was pale, tear-streaked. There was no makeup. It was a performance of utter despair. And of course, her hands were wrapped protectively around her pregnant belly. "Hi, everyone," she whispered, her voice like a broken bird. I didn't want to do this. Jamal and we're private people." She sniffled, a perfect tear rolling down her cheek. "But we don't know what else to do." The camera, presumably held by Jamal, panned slowly to an empty corner of the room. That was supposed to be the nursery." She choked out a sob, catching in her throat. We were so excited to meet our baby. Our little boy." She looked back at the camera, her eyes pleading. "But we can't. We can't even afford a crib now." The camera zoomed in on her face. My husband's sister, Amara, she inherited $30 million from their grandparents, and she cut us all off. She won't answer our calls," Tiffany continued, her voice gaining a little strength. We didn't even ask for much. We just wanted to make sure our baby was safe. That he would have a future. But she told us we were nothing. She kicked us out. She has everything. And our baby has nothing." She broke down completely, burying her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking. "I don't know what we're going to do," she cried. We have medical bills. We have rent. And she's in that huge house all alone with all that money. How can someone be so cruel? How can she abandon her own family, her own nephew?" The video cut to black and text appeared on the screen. "Pastor Marcus Jenkins has been robbed by his own daughter. We have been left with nothing. Please help us. We need to hire a lawyer to fight for our family, to fight for our baby. Please, anything helps. God bless." And then the link, the Jenkins Family Justice Fund on GoFundMe. Their goal, $250,000. I felt sick. I dropped the phone on the desk as if it were on fire. $250,000, I said, my voice hollow. They're using a fake pregnancy and a fake nursery to grift $250,000. It's brilliant, Harrison said, his voice laced with cold fury. The pastor paints you as a demon. The mother-to-be paints you as a monster. They've cornered the market on public sympathy. And he was right. The social media attack was even more devastating than the sermon. The comments under the video were a torrent of pure hatred, all aimed at me. Amara Jenkins is a monster. How can you steal from a baby? That whole family is so holy and she's just pure evil. I hope she rots in that house alone. Dox her. Find her. Someone needs to teach this witch a lesson. My phone, which had been buzzing with texts from church members, now began to scream. It was a flood of notifications, DMs, mentions on every platform. My face was being plastered everywhere as the millionaire monster. I was a pariah. In less than 24 hours, my family had successfully destroyed my name, my reputation, and my entire life. I was trapped in the $30 million house, which now felt less like a fortress and more like a prison. The final blow came an hour later. It was an email. It was from Mr. Henderson, the kind elderly man who ran the community library where I had worked. Dear Amara, it began. I am so very, very sorry. I don't believe a word of what they're saying about you. You've been nothing but a light in this community. But the board held an emergency meeting this morning. Several members from your father's church. They brought up the public outcry. They said your presence has become a distraction and a moral hazard to the library's mission. My eyes scanned the lines looking for the words I knew were coming. Amara, they voted to terminate your employment effective immediately. I fought for you. I really did. But the pressure was too much. I am so sorry. Please be safe. I put the phone down. I was now truly completely alone. They had taken my community. They had taken my reputation. And now they had taken my sanctuary, my one place of peace. They had fired me. I looked at Mr. Harrison. The fear, the shock, it all receded, and something cold and hard took its place. All right, I said, my voice steady. They've fired their first shots. Now it's our turn. Harrison smiled. I thought you'd never ask. They're using public opinion. We'll use the truth. And Amara, we have $330 million worth of truth. The smear campaign was brutal and effective. For a week, I was a prisoner in the Buckhead estate. My phone was a constant scream of hatred, so I turned it off. The community I had served in the library, the church members who had known me since I was 5, they all believed the lie. They saw Pastor Marcus, a pillar of the community, and they saw Tiffany, a fragile, pregnant white woman, and they made their choice. I was the enemy. Mr. Harrison was my only link to the outside world. He worked from the study, his team in New York digging into the church's finances, his presence a fortress of quiet legal fury. They are getting sloppy, he said one afternoon, looking at a spreadsheet. Your father has been running a community angel fund for 10 years. It appears the only angel benefiting is his Lexus dealership. We were planning our counteroffensive, a quiet, precise strike, not a public brawl. We were going to dismantle them using the $330 million, the money they didn't know about. We were going to leak the truth about the church's finances to the Atlanta press. We were going to expose the GoFundMe as a fraud. We were preparing our weapons. But they struck first. And they struck hard. A courier on a motorcycle roared up the driveway. He wasn't delivering a package. He was a process server. Amara Jenkins, he asked, holding a thick white envelope. Yes, I said. You've been served. He handed me the envelope and was gone. I walked back into the study, the envelope feeling heavy in my hand. Harrison looked up, his eyes sharp. What is it? I think it's the next step. I opened it. My hands were steady. I was past fear. Now it was just cold. It was a lawsuit, a thick, dense stack of paper filled with heretofores and affidavits and whereas. I handed it to Harrison. I watched his face as he read. It was the first time I had ever seen him look truly dangerously angry. His face, usually so composed, tightened. A muscle in his jaw twitched. "The vipers," he whispered. It was the most emotional word I had ever heard him use. "What is it?" I asked. "What does it say?" He placed the papers on the desk. "It's a petition, filed by Marcus Jenkins, Brenda Jenkins, Jamal Jenkins, and Tiffany Jenkins, against you, Amara Jenkins. They are contesting the will of Elias and Loretta Bishop." I nodded. "We expected that." "No," Harrison said, his voice like ice. "Not like this. They are not just claiming you influenced them, they are claiming you abused them. They are petitioning the court for control of the estate on the grounds that your grandparents were not of sound mind when they signed the will. That they were, and I quote, mentally incompetent, suffering from advanced dementia and senility." A hot, sick feeling rose in my throat. "But that's insane. Mr. Strickland was there. They were sharp. Pop was still beating me at chess a month ago." "It doesn't matter," Harrison said, his eyes scanning the pages. "They've built a narrative, and they have proof. They have affidavits. Oh God, this is dirty." "Affidavits from who?" He held up a page. "Affidavit number 1, from a nurse, Patricia Barnes, a registered nurse who, and I quote, was hired for private in-home care for Elias Bishop in his final months." Nurse Barnes. I searched my memory. I remember her. Yes, she was there for 2 days. Big Mama fired her. She said she was lazy and kept dropping things. "Well, Nurse Barnes has a very different memory of her 48 hours, Harrison said grimly. He began to read from the affidavit. "I, Patricia Barnes, registered nurse, do swear that in the course of my professional duties, I witnessed alarming behavior from the granddaughter Amara Jenkins. Ms. Jenkins kept Mr. and Mrs. Bishop in a state of agitated fear. She controlled all access to them, refusing to let their son, Pastor Jenkins, visit his own parents." "A lie!" I burst out. "They refused to visit." Harrison held up a hand, his eyes still scanning the text. "It gets worse. Amara Jenkins controlled their medication. I witnessed her on 2 separate occasions threatening Mr. Bishop. She would hold his pills in her hand and say, 'You'll sign what I tell you to sign, or you don't get your heart medicine.'" Mr. Bishop was terrified. He once grabbed my arm when she left the room and whispered, "That girl is a devil. She's trying to steal everything." I also believe she was a physical threat. I saw dark, unexplained bruises on Mrs. Bishop's arms, which Amara dismissed as bumping into furniture. I could not in good conscience continue my employment and witness this elder abuse, but I was afraid for my own safety. I sank into the chair opposite the desk. I couldn't breathe. She's accusing me of elder abuse, of physical assault." "It's a calculated, perjured statement," Harrison said, his voice shaking with rage. "It's designed to paint you as a monster, a sociopath." He tossed the page onto the desk. "And now, the motive." He picked up the next affidavit. "From Tiffany Jenkins." "Of course," I whispered. "Tiffany's statement is the masterpiece," Harrison said. "I, Tiffany Jenkins, do swear that Amara Jenkins has harbored a deep pathological jealousy towards me and my husband Jamal for her entire life. As the adopted child, she always resented us, the real family. She hated that Big Mama and Pop loved Jamal so much. She especially hated—" Harrison paused, his face tightening. "She hated— what? She especially hated my pregnancy. She knew this baby, their first great-grandchild, would be the true heir." Amara became unhinged. She told me, and I quote, "I don't care about your stupid baby. I'll make sure you all get nothing. I'll get those old fools to sign everything over to me before they even know what's happening." She was obsessed. She saw them as her personal piggy bank. She preyed on their age, she poisoned them against their own son, my father-in-law, Pastor Jenkins. She is a vindictive, unstable, and dangerous person. I am terrified of what she might do to me, my husband, or my unborn child. I stared at the wall. The lies were so enormous, so complete. They had woven a story of a jealous, abusive, sociopathic monster. The nurse provided the how. Tiffany provided the why. It's a work of fiction, I finally said. Yes, Harrison said. But it's a work of fiction that a judge is now reading. And they filed it. With this. He tapped the last page of the document. A motion for an emergency injunction. What does that mean? It means, Harrison said, closing the file, that based on the credible threat of elder abuse and the overwhelming evidence of your unstable nature, the judge has granted their motion. As of 9 a.m. this morning, the $30 million estate is frozen. All of it. The bank accounts, the stocks, the house. Everything. You cannot touch a penny. You cannot sell, you cannot transfer. You are legally locked out of your own inheritance pending a full hearing. The room was silent. I was sitting in a $30 million house that I no longer controlled. I was being sued for abuse by a family that had thrown me out in the rain. My reputation was destroyed. My job was gone. And now my inheritance was gone. I was once again the girl with nothing. I was truly, completely cornered. They're going to win, I whispered. They're actually going to win. They certainly think so, Harrison said. He stood up and walked to the window. What do you mean? I just received a text alert, Harrison said, looking at his phone. It's from an Instagram tracker I set up on your brother. He turned his phone to me. It was a new post from Jamal. It was a selfie taken in a restaurant. The whole family was there. Marcus, Brenda, Jamal, and Tiffany. They were all grinning. They were raising glasses of champagne. Tiffany in the center was holding her pregnant belly with one hand and her champagne flute with the other. The caption read, "A glorious victory, step one of taking back what is ours. Justice is coming. Thanks to Nurse Barnes for being brave enough to tell the truth. Hart family. First #blessed, Jenkins justice #legacy." They were celebrating. They were toasting the nurse. They were so arrogant, so stupid, they were posting the evidence of their celebration online for the entire world to see. I looked at the picture. The fear, the despair. It vanished. It was replaced by a cold, hard, clarifying rage. They're celebrating, I said. Yes, Harrison said. They believe they've cut off your oxygen. They've frozen the 30 million. I stood up. I walked over to the desk. I looked at the picture of my family toasting their victory built on lies and slander. Then I looked at Mr. Harrison. Good, I said. Let them fight over the frozen scraps. Let them celebrate. He raised an eyebrow. They've made one very big mistake, I said. They've frozen the bait. But they still don't know about the arsenal. I tapped my grandfather's desk. Mr. Harrison, I think it's time we unleash the $330 million. I want that team of private investigators you told me about. The CX Mossad ones. I want them hired. Tonight. I want to know everything about Nurse Patricia Barnes. I want to know where Tiffany bought that fake pregnancy belly. I want to know every dollar Marcus Jenkins ever stole from that church. I picked up the lawsuit. They want a war fine. Let's give them one. The family's Instagram post was the last piece of fuel I needed. The image of them toasting with Tiffany's hand on that lying belly burned away any remaining traces of grief or fear. All that was left was a cold, pure, diamond-hard resolve. They thought they had won. They thought that by freezing the 30 million they had cut off my legs. They had crippled me, the poor librarian, leaving me trapped in a mansion I couldn't afford to keep. They were laughing, celebrating. I turned to Mr. Harrison. They're celebrating. Let them, he said, his eyes on the same photo. Their arrogance is a liability. They're sloppy. Mr. Harrison, I said, my voice quiet. I want that team you mentioned. The corporate intelligence specialists, the ex-Mossad ones, I don't care what it costs. I want them hired, tonight. A thin, satisfied smile touched Harrison's lips. I already have them on retainer, Amara. The $330 million trust provides for extreme security and legal challenges. I was just waiting for your signal. He made one phone call. The team will be operational within the hour, he said, hanging up. They're based in D.C. They'll work remotely. What are our targets? Everything, I said. I want to know every breath they've taken for the last 6 months. I want to know about Nurse Patricia Barnes. I want to know about Tiffany's pregnancy. And I want to know about my father's church. The next 72 hours were like nothing I had ever experienced. The $330 million wasn't just money. It was a force. It was access. It was speed. The guest house, which was connected to the main house's fiber optic line, became our war room. The team consisted of 3 people. A woman named Miriam, the ex-Mossad operative who handled human intelligence. A man named Chen, a forensic accountant who used to hunt for the SEC. And a 20-something-year-old data miner named Alex, who looked like they lived on energy drinks and sugar. They didn't just look for public records. They dove into the dark. We started with Nurse Patricia Barnes, the star witness, the one who swore she saw me commit elder abuse. People like this. Miriam said, her voice a calm, accented monotone. They don't commit perjury for free, and they're almost always in trouble. Chen, the accountant, found it in 90 minutes. Patricia Barnes, he announced. 54 years old, divorced, and in serious financial trouble. She has a $50,000 line of credit at the Beau Rivage Casino in Biloxi, Mississippi. She's over the limit, and her payments are 3 months late. She's desperate. Biloxi? I said. That's a 3-hour drive from here. Tiffany and Jamal went there for a weekend getaway 2 weeks ago. Jamal posted about it. Exactly, Miriam said. I'm already pulling the casino's surveillance logs. They're very cooperative when you mention potential high-level fraud. An hour later, an email arrived from Miriam. It was a video file. Got her, the email read. Harrison and I watched it on the study's large monitor. The timestamp was 2 weeks old. The location, the high-limit cashier's cage. There was Tiffany wearing designer sunglasses indoors. And there was Nurse Barnes looking nervous. The camera angle was perfect. We watched as Tiffany slid a thick white bank-sized envelope across the counter. Nurse Barnes picked it up quickly, fanned the cash inside, and nodded. Then, as she was walking away, Jamal, my idiot brother Jamal, actually patted her on the back and smiled, like they had just closed a deal. It's a direct cash-on-camera bribe, Harrison said, his voice breathless with legal satisfaction. They're amateurs, glorious, arrogant amateurs. Next, we went after the Jenkins Justice Fund. Alex, the data miner, took that. Oh, this is easy, they said, their fingers flying across 3 keyboards. The GoFundMe is a public campaign. The money is being deposited into a new checking account. Jenkins Family Future LLC opened 6 weeks ago. Tiffany and Jamal are the only signatories. Can you see the spending? I asked. Alex laughed. See it, I'm watching it in real time. A screen lit up with a bank statement. Okay, first charge, Alex said. $459 from Theatrical Props Incorporated, based in Los Angeles. Item description: the deluxe silicone 8-month pregnancy prosthetic, stage 2, Caucasian skin tone. I felt the air leave my lungs. She bought it. The belly. It's a prop. A high-end one, Chen added, looking over. Used in movies. Got the receipt. Emailed to Tiffany's Gmail account, which she helpfully auto-synced to her public calendar. It gets better, Alex said, their voice dripping with sarcasm. The Help Us We're Poor Fund has received $112,000 in donations so far, mostly from elderly members of your father's church. And the withdrawals? Harrison asked. There's a $25,000 wire transfer, Alex said. Made 3 days ago, not to a law firm, Not to a doctor's office. Alex clicked a button. A new window opened, a credit card statement. The transfer was a down payment, Alex said. To Maserati of Atlanta. What? I whispered. Your brother, Jamal, Alex said, while Tiffany was crying on TikTok about not being able to afford a crib, was taking delivery of a 2024 Maserati Ghibli, metallic blue. He even used the GoFundMe-linked debit card to pay for the premium trim package. He'd posted a picture on his private Instagram, a selfie of him grinning in the driver's seat. Alex had it in seconds. The caption, "The Lord provides hard work finally paying off. Hatch blessed. Hashtag Jenkins. Life. Hash new whip." He called it hard work, I said, feeling dizzy. He called stealing from old people hard work. Now for the head of the snake, Harrison said, his face a granite mask. Pastor Marcus. Chen the accountant had been working on this quietly. The Beacon Light Community Church is a 501c3 nonprofit, Chen explained. It's clean, too clean, but the community angel fund he preaches about, the one for the new youth center. Yes, I asked. It doesn't exist, Chen said. It's not a church account. It's a private for-profit LLC, M. Jenkins Enterprises. Your father is the sole owner. For 10 years, he has been encouraging his congregation to make their checks out directly to the Angel Fund, telling them it's for the church. It's a classic shell. A shadow corporation. What has he been doing with the money? Chen pulled up a file. County land records. He's been buying land, Chen said. A lot of it. Undeveloped plots out near Stone Mountain. He's been using the church's tax-free donations diverted through his private LLC to build a personal real estate portfolio. There is no youth center. There is no homeless shelter. There is only Marcus. He's not just a liar. He's committing wire fraud, tax evasion, and massive-scale embezzlement. In 72 hours, we had it all. The high-definition video of the bribe, the receipt for the fake pregnancy belly, the credit card statements for the Maserati paid for by the GoFundMe, and the incorporation papers, bank statements, and land deeds proving my father was a criminal robbing his own congregation. I sat back in my grandfather's leather chair. The desk in front of us was covered in a mountain of evidence. Mr. Harrison, I said, my voice shaking not with fear, but with a terrible cold power. This isn't a lawsuit anymore. This is a criminal conspiracy. Yes, it is, Harrison said. He stacked the files into 3 neat, devastating piles. They're all implicated: perjury, bribery, conspiracy to commit fraud, wire fraud, embezzlement. My family thought they were coming to a civil hearing in 1 week to fight a librarian for $30 million. They had no idea they were walking blindfolded and arrogant into an execution. And I was the one holding the axe. The day of the hearing arrived. It wasn't a full trial, just a preliminary hearing to decide if the injunction, the freeze on my $30 million, should be made permanent. My family arrived at the courthouse like they were attending a premiere. Marcus was in his finest suit, projecting solemn dignity. Brenda was beside him, draped in black, the picture of a grieving, wronged mother. Jamal looked smug, and Tiffany, she was the star of the show. She wore a simple maternity dress, her hand never leaving the massive prosthetic belly. She looked fragile. She looked like a victim. The people in the hallway, members of my father's congregation who had come to support him, parted for her like she was holy. I sat on the other side of the aisle with Mr. Harrison. I wore a simple gray dress. I was the villain, the abusive, sociopathic librarian. The air was thick with their self-righteousness. Their lawyer, Mr. Krebs, was a small, sweaty man with a loud tie. He was vibrating with overconfidence. He clearly believed his own case. He thought he was about to wipe the floor with me. Your Honor, Krebs began, his voice oily. We are here today to protect a sacred legacy. The legacy of Elias and Loretta Bishop. A legacy being stolen by an ungrateful, unstable, and abusive woman. He pointed at me. Amara Jenkins. He spent 10 minutes painting a picture of me as a monster. He read from Tiffany's affidavit, his voice dripping with fake sympathy for the mother-to-be. He read from Nurse Barnes's affidavit, his voice full of outrage as he described the bruises and the threats. "Nurse Barnes is here today, Your Honor," Krebs said, gesturing to the back of the courtroom. A brave whistleblower, Nurse Barnes, sitting in the back row, tried to look noble. She just looked nervous. "This woman," Krebs continued, pointing at me again, "preyed on the elderly, and now she is trying to steal this family's future. We ask that the injunction be made permanent, and that control of the estate be transferred to my client, Pastor Marcus Jenkins, the rightful heir who will manage it for the community as his parents intended." Krebs sat down, looking very pleased with himself. The judge, a no-nonsense older woman named Judge Miller, looked at the affidavits, then looked at me over her glasses. "Mr. Harrison," she said, her voice flat, "your response?" Mr. Harrison stood up. He was the picture of calm. He buttoned his suit jacket. "Your Honor," he said, his voice quiet, but carrying through the silent room, "my client has been subjected to a staggering and frankly amateurish smear campaign. Mr. Krebs's entire case rests on two pillars of truth: the heartfelt affidavit of a loving pregnant mother, and the sworn testimony of a concerned nurse. If you will indulge me, I would like to examine those pillars." "This is not a full trial, Mr. Harrison," the judge said, impatient. "I am aware, Your Honor. I merely wish to cross-examine the individuals who submitted these sworn and deeply damaging affidavits. I call Mrs. Tiffany Jenkins to the stand." A ripple went through the room. Krebs half stood. "Your Honor, my client is in a fragile state. This is harassment." "She submitted a 10-page affidavit, Mr. Krebs," the judge snapped. "She made herself a witness." "Get on the stand, Mrs. Jenkins." Tiffany's confident smirk vanished. This wasn't part of the plan. She looked at Jamal, who gave her a "you got this" nod. She waddled to the stand and placed one hand on the Bible, the other on her belly. She swore the oath. Harrison approached her gently. "Mrs. Jenkins, thank you for being here. This must be very stressful in your condition." "It is," she whispered, looking at the judge. "But I have to do what's right. For my baby." "Of course," Harrison said. "Your affidavit is very moving. You state you are terrified for your unborn child's future, that Amara has stolen what is rightfully his." "Yes," Tiffany said, her voice trembling. She has been jealous of me, of this baby, from the beginning. She hates me for giving this family a real heir." "I see. And you are, according to this, approximately 8 months pregnant." "Yes," Tiffany said, patting the belly. "I'm due in just a few weeks." "A joyous time," Harrison said. "You must have been doing a lot of shopping, clothes, cribs, props." Krebs shot up. "Objection. Props. What is he implying?" "Sustained," the judge said. "Watch it, Mr. Harrison." "My apologies, Your Honor. I'll rephrase. Mrs. Jenkins, are you familiar with an online company called Theatrical Props Incorporated?" Tiffany's face went blank. "No, I've never heard of it. Why?" "That's very strange," Harrison said, walking back to his table. He picked up a file. "Because we have here Exhibit A, a credit card receipt, from your personal Visa card, dated 6 weeks ago. It's a single charge to Theatrical Props Incorporated." He handed the receipt to the bailiff, who handed it to the judge, and then a copy to Tiffany. Tiffany stared at it, her face turning from pale to a blotchy, sick white. "The item description is right there, Mrs. Jenkins," Harrison said, his voice rising, no longer gentle. "1 deluxe silicone 8-month pregnancy prosthetic stage, 2 Caucasian skin tone, for $459. Can you please explain to the court why you purchased a professional-grade fake pregnancy belly?" The room exploded. Krebs was on his feet, sputtering. "Your Honor, it's a fake. It's inadmissible." My brother Jamal leaped to his feet in the gallery. "Lies, you're lying, she's pregnant. Tell them, Tiff." "Order!" Judge Miller roared, banging her gavel. "Order! Mr. Jenkins, you sit down and shut your mouth, or I will have you removed in cuffs. Order!" The room fell silent. Everyone was staring at Tiffany. She was shaking. Her eyes darted from the judge to me, to her husband. "Mrs. Jenkins," the judge said, her voice ice. "Answer the question." I, I, Tiffany stammered. It was for a joke. A Halloween party, no, a costume party. It was a joke." "A joke," Harrison thundered. "A joke, Mrs. Jenkins. You've been wearing this joke for 2 months. You used this joke to solicit $112,000 on GoFundMe. A joke that you used as the basis for a sworn affidavit to this court, accusing my client of hating your unborn child." He slapped another file on the table. "Exhibit B bank records from your Jenkins Justice Fund, showing a $25,000 down payment not to a law firm, not to a doctor, but to Maserati of Atlanta. You were buying a luxury car with money you grifted using a fake pregnancy." Tiffany let out a sound, a high-pitched wail. She wasn't an actress anymore. She was just a cornered animal. "It's not true. Jamal, do something." The judge was staring at Tiffany with a look of pure, unadulterated disgust. "Mrs. Jenkins, you are under oath. Are you or are you not pregnant?" Tiffany just sobbed a horrible, gulping, guilty sound. "I didn't think so," the judge said. "This is a fraud. You have committed a fraud upon this court." "But, Your Honor, that's not all," Harrison said, his voice booming. "This spectacular fraud is just the foundation. The real crime is the claim of elder abuse, a claim that rests entirely on the word of Nurse Patricia Barnes." In the back row, Nurse Barnes looked like she was about to be sick. "Mr. Krebs submitted her affidavit," Harrison said. "We'd like to submit our rebuttal. Exhibit C, Your Honor. This is high-definition security footage from the cashier's cage at the Beau Rivage Casino in Biloxi, Mississippi. Time-stamped 2 weeks ago, the night before Nurse Barnes signed her affidavit." Harrison nodded to his tech assistant. The large monitors in the courtroom, the ones meant for evidence, lit up. The video was crystal clear. There was Tiffany in sunglasses, there was Nurse Barnes looking over her shoulder, and there was my brother Jamal. We watched in dead silence as Tiffany slid a thick white envelope across the counter. We watched as Nurse Barnes picked it up, fanned the cash, and nodded. We watched as Jamal grinned and clapped her on the back. A business deal. In the back of the courtroom, Nurse Barnes let out a small, terrified cry. Harrison paused the video on Jamal's idiotic grinning face. "That," Harrison announced, "is the plaintiff Tiffany Jenkins handing a $10,000 cash bribe to the defense's star witness Patricia Barnes, who then, less than 24 hours later, signed a perjured statement accusing my client of felony elder abuse." That was it. The dam broke. Nurse Barnes leaped to her feet. They made me," she screamed, pointing a shaking finger at my family. They knew about my debts. They said they'd ruin me. I needed the money. I'm sorry I lied. I never saw Ms. Jenkins do anything wrong. She was good to them. They wrote it all down. I just signed it. I'm sorry. Please." Chaos. Absolute, total chaos. My father's face was ashen. He looked like he had aged 30 years. My mother was just staring into space, her mouth open. Jamal looked like he was going to vomit. "Order!" Judge Miller slammed her gavel, her face purple with rage. "Order! Order! In my court!" She glared at Krebs, who looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him. "Mr. Krebs, did you know you submitted a case built on theatrical props, wire fraud, and a bribed, perjured witness?" "Your Honor," Krebs squeaked. I had no idea. I was misled by my clients." "Save it for the Bar Association," the judge snapped. "The injunction is dissolved. The motion is dismissed with prejudice. The $30 million estate of Elias and Loretta Bishop belongs to Ms. Amara Jenkins, effective immediately." She wasn't done. "Bailiff, take Ms. Barnes into custody for contempt of court and perjury." the nurse wailed as she was cuffed. "And as for the rest of you," the judge said, glaring at Marcus, Brenda, Jamal, and the sobbing Tiffany. "Mr. Harrison, I am formally requesting that you forward this entire file, the casino footage, the bank records, the GoFundMe page, the receipt for the prosthetic, every last piece of it to the district attorney's office. This is no longer a civil matter. This is a criminal conspiracy." She slammed her gavel. "We are adjourned." The sound echoed in the room. It was over. My family didn't move. They just sat there, frozen, shattered. The trap I had set using the evidence they were stupid enough to create had snapped shut. They were done. The sound of Judge Miller's gavel was like a cannon shot in the silent courtroom. Adjourned. It was over. For a full 10 seconds, my family did not move. They sat frozen like statues of their own ruin. My father, Marcus, was no longer a powerful pastor. He was just an old, gray-faced man, his eyes hollow and staring at the wood grain of the table. My mother, Brenda, was clutching his arm, her mouth slightly open, a silent, trapped expression. Jamal looked like he was going to be physically sick, his face a pale, sweaty green. And Tiffany, the star of the show. Her performance was finally over. She had her face buried in her hands, her shoulders shaking, but the sobs were real now. They were the ugly, gulping sobs of a cornered animal. The spell was broken by the bailiff. "Ma'am," he said not unkindly to Nurse Barnes, who was still standing and whimpering. "You need to come with me." The click of the handcuffs was loud, final. Her wail as they led her out the side door was the first note of the symphony of their collapse. Mr. Harrison touched my elbow. "Let's go," he whispered. "We will walk out. We will not run." We stood up, and as we did, the gallery, which had been silent, erupted. It wasn't in support, it was in horror. The whispers started crackling through the air like fire. "Did you... a fake belly. She faked a pregnancy. $100,000. She stole our donations. Bribed the nurse. I heard the judge say it. Criminal." My family finally stood, a slow, clumsy, broken movement. As they turned to leave, they faced the congregation they had conned. The aunties and uncles who had backed them, who had hated me, were now staring at them with eyes of cold, hard betrayal. It was a walk of shame. They stumbled down the aisle, no one moving to let them pass. Marcus, who was used to walking through crowds as people tried to touch his hand, was now an object of contempt. People recoiled from him. "Pastor," one of the oldest deacons said, his voice loud in the silence. "You lied. You lied in God's house." Marcus flinched as if he'd been struck. As they burst through the courthouse doors, it got worse. The sound of the courtroom battle had drawn blood in the water. A local news crew who had been there for another story descended on them. "Pastor Jenkins," a reporter shouted, shoving a microphone in his face. "Is it true your daughter-in-law faked a pregnancy?" "Pastor, is it true you bribed a witness?" "Get out of my way!" Jamal snarled, and he shoved the cameraman. It was a fatal mistake. The camera went sideways, but it was rolling. The image of the golden child, the smug man who had just been exposed turning to violence, was now on tape. They fled, piling into their old SUV, not like a family, but like a disorganized gang of criminals peeling away from the curb. I watched them go. Then Mr. Harrison and I walked out into the sunshine. That, he said, was phase 1. The dominoes didn't just fall after that. They were blasted apart. That night, the internet finished the job. My family had used social media to build their pyre. Now it was lit. The local news anchor, a sharp woman named Cynthia Lee, led the 10 o'clock news with it. "An unbelievable story from the Fulton County Courthouse today," she said, her face serious. "Prominent Atlanta pastor Marcus Jenkins at the center of a bizarre and fraudulent lawsuit." They ran the story. They didn't have the casino footage, but Mr. Harrison's team helpfully provided it to them by 10:05. They showed the clip of Jamal shoving the cameraman. They showed the GoFundMe page with its goal of $250,000, and they showed a screenshot of the receipt for the deluxe silicone 8-month pregnancy prosthetic. Tiffany's TikTok video, the one of her crying about her baby, was still up. But the comments section had become a digital execution. My grandma gave $500 to this thief giving it back. You faked a baby. What kind of monster are you? I hope you go to jail. And that useless husband of yours. She stole from the church. She stole from her own family. This is the most disgusting thing I have ever seen. By midnight, GoFundMe had taken the page down. They didn't just freeze the funds, they issued a public statement about a campaign found to be in violation of our terms of service regarding fraudulent claims, and announced they would be working to refund all $112,000 to the donors. The money Jamal and Tiffany had been spending the money for the Maserati, it was all gone. And now, they owed it. The next morning, the district attorney, spurred by Judge Miller's official recommendation and a massive wave of public outrage, acted. He didn't just investigate, he sent units. Mr. Harrison's PI, who was still on the payroll, sent me the text. It was a photo. Jamal and Tiffany, my brother and his wife, were being led out of their apartment in handcuffs. Jamal, who had looked so smug in his Maserati selfie, was yelling, "You can't do this. We're the victims here." Tiffany, no longer wearing her prop, was just a pale, thin, terrified woman in sweatpants, her face hidden, her hands cuffed behind her back. The charges were read: bribery of a witness, conspiracy to commit fraud, wire fraud, perjury. But the DA was not done. Jamal and Tiffany were just the appetizers. He opened a formal criminal investigation into the finances of the Beacon Light Community Church, specifically targeting the M. Jenkins Enterprises Shell Corporation that Chen had uncovered. The church's accounts were frozen. The accounts for M. Jenkins Enterprises were frozen. The land deeds he had bought with stolen donation money were seized as assets pending the investigation. In a single morning, my father, Marcus Jenkins, went from being a pillar of the community to a criminal suspect. The final domino fell that following Sunday. My father, in an act of supreme delusional arrogance, tried to go to church. He tried to get on the pulpit to preach his way out of it. He believed he could talk his way out of anything. He believed his voice, his anointing, was more powerful than the evidence. He was wrong. He and my mother Brenda walked up the steps to the church. He was in his finest suit. She was in her finest hat. They were met at the massive oak doors, not by cheering crowds, but by the church deacons. The men and women who had counted the offering plates, the people who now understood exactly what he had done. "Pastor," the head deacon said, his voice like stone, "you are not welcome here." "This is my church," Marcus blustered. "I am God's anointed." "You are a thief," the deacon replied, his voice loud enough for the gathering crowd of former worshippers to hear. "You stole from the elderly. You stole from our children's building fund. You are a disgrace to God's house." Brenda began to cry. But where will we go? This is our home." The parsonage, the beautiful house that came with his job, the house they had kicked me out of, belonged to the church. "The church," the deacon said, "has voted. You are removed. You are no longer our pastor. The bank has been instructed to seize the house pending the investigation into the funds you stole. You have 48 hours to vacate." They were fired. They were homeless. They lost their golden child to the legal system. They lost their reputation to the news. They lost their money to the DA. And now they had lost their home and their church. My father and mother stood on the sidewalk, surrounded by the whispers of the people they had ruled for 20 years. They had nothing left. They had only each other and the complete and total ruin they had built with their own hands. Weeks passed. The legal fires that had consumed my family burned brightly, fueled by the district attorney and the Atlanta press. Jamal and Tiffany were out on bail, their passports revoked, their faces now synonymous with the fake baby fraud. Their trial was set. My father Marcus was buried in legal notices, the church's accounts frozen, the embezzlement case against him building into an ironclad fortress. I watched it all from the quiet of my grandfather's study. The $30 million was mine, but I hadn't touched it. I was busy. I was working with Mr. Harrison restructuring the $330 million trust, the real inheritance. I was transitioning from the girl who managed a secret $5 million fund to the woman who would command a $330 million foundation. I was learning. I was becoming the woman my grandparents had trained me to be. The house, my fortress, had become my world. Until one afternoon the gate intercom buzzed. I looked at the security monitor, and I felt nothing, just a cold, distant curiosity. It was them, Marcus and Brenda. But they were not the people I knew. The power, the arrogance, the righteous fury, it was all gone. They looked old, decades older. My father's expensive suit was gone, replaced by a cheap-looking polo shirt wrinkled and stained. My mother's hair was gray at the roots, her face bare of makeup, etched with lines of terror and exhaustion. They looked small. They looked broken. They looked exactly like what they were: homeless, friendless, and futureless. They stood outside my massive iron gates, the ones they had tried to storm just weeks before. Now they looked at the camera lens like beggars. Brenda pressed the button again. Her hand was shaking. I pressed the talk button. "What do you want?" My voice echoed out of the small speaker, cold and metallic. Brenda flinched. She grabbed Marcus's arm. "Amara, baby, is that you?" "What do you want?" I repeated. It was not a question. It was a demand. "Amara, please," Brenda cried, her voice cracking. And for the first time in my life, I heard real tears. Not the tears of manipulation, but the hot, ugly tears of pure desperation. "Baby, please, you have to help us. We have nowhere to go." Marcus, the great pastor. Marcus just stared at the ground. He couldn't even look at the camera. They took the house," Brenda choked out, gasping for air. "The deacons. They locked us out. They took the cars. The bank accounts. They're all frozen. Marcus's, all of it. Amara, we spent last night in a Motel 6. We have nothing. And that is my problem." "How?" I asked. Marcus visibly recoiled. He finally looked up at the camera. His eyes were bloodshot and defeated. "Amara," he said, his voice a hoarse, broken whisper. "Daughter, please, don't do this. We're your family." "Family." I repeated the word, letting it hang in the air between us. "The family that threw me out in the rain. The family that sued me. The family that called me an abuser. The family that faked a pregnancy to steal from me. That family." "We were wrong," Brenda shrieked, clawing at the bars of the gate. "Okay, we were wrong. We admit it. We were desperate. We made a mistake. But we're sorry, Amara. I'm your mother. I'm begging you. We are on our knees. Don't let your own parents die on the street. We're all we have left." I watched them. The performance was over. This was the truth. This was the raw, pathetic core of who they were. I walked out of the house. I walked down the long, curving driveway. I didn't open the gate. I stood on my side, looking at them through the iron bars. They looked like prisoners. My mother saw me, and her face crumpled with a horrible, desperate hope. "Amara. Oh, baby, thank God. Thank God. You still have it, don't you?" Marcus said, his voice urgent, stepping forward. The 30 million. The judge gave it to you." I just looked at him. "She did," Brenda said, nodding frantically. "We saw it. It's yours, Amara. It's so much money." "It's too much for one person. You can't possibly need all of it. Just a little baby. That's all we're asking. Buy us a small apartment, a little condo, just enough to live, to start over. We'll go away. We'll never bother you again, I swear, just a small piece. Please. They were still doing it. After everything. After the lies, the fraud, the criminal charges, they were still standing there begging for the money. They still thought that was what this was all about. I looked at my mother. I looked at my father. And I finally understood. They were incapable of change. They were incapable of remorse. They were only capable of wanting. The 30 million, I said, my voice flat. The money you tried to steal. The money you built a mountain of lies to get. We're sorry, Marcus whispered. No, you're not, I said. You're just sorry you got caught. I took a breath. It doesn't matter anyway. There is no $30 million. Brenda's face went slack. What? What do you mean, the judge? The judge gave it to me, I said, and I got rid of it. Got rid of it? Marcus said, his voice rising in panic. What? Did the lawyers take it? The taxes? The government? No, I said. I gave it away, all of it. I made a phone call the day after the trial. I transferred every last cent in one lump sum. Brenda looked like she was going to be sick. Gave it to who? To the church. I almost laughed. No, I donated it. A $30 million endowment to Howard University. Marcus just stared at me. It's for the Loretta Bishop Scholarship Fund, I said, my voice cold and clear, looking right at my mother. It's a full-ride scholarship in perpetuity, specifically for young first-generation Black women from Atlanta, whose families tell them they should stay home and not have big, foolish ideas. My mother's knees buckled. She remembered. She knew exactly what I had just done. She made a horrible gagging sound and physically sank to the ground outside the gate, clutching the bars. No, you didn't. You're lying. You wouldn't. She would, Marcus whispered. He was staring at me, his eyes wide with a new dawning horror. You fool! Brenda screamed at me from the ground, her face twisting into that old familiar mask of hatred. You stupid, stupid fool! You gave it all away. You destroyed us. You destroyed your brother. You destroyed everything. For nothing. You're left with nothing. You're as poor as we are. You're... She stopped, choking on her own rage. I looked down at her, a pathetic, broken woman clinging to the bars of my gate. Nothing, I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. You think I'm left with nothing? I shook my head. That has always been your problem. Both of you. You are so loud, so greedy, so focused on the shiny thing right in front of your face, that you never once, in 28 years, bothered to look deeper. You never once asked, what did Big Mama and Pop Pop really do? Marcus looked confused. What are you talking about? They were retired. They had investments. You were fighting over the bait, Marcus, I said. The $30 million was the bait. It was the test. And you and Mom and Jamal and Tiffany, you all failed. Spectacularly. Brenda looked up, her face streaked with dirt and tears. Bait? What? You thought I was a librarian, I said. You thought I was the stupid one, the charity case. You were so busy calling me the black sheep you never realized my grandparents were training me to be the wolf. I stepped back from the gate. You were fighting over $30 million while I was managing the real inheritance, the Bishop Family Trust, the $330 million pharmaceutical and biotech portfolio that Pop Pop built from nothing. The money you never even knew existed. The silence that followed was absolute. It was heavier than the courtroom. It was the sound of two lives, two entire worldviews collapsing into dust. Marcus's mouth was open. No sound came out. Brenda just stared. The hatred, the anger, the tears, it all just vanished, replaced by a vast, empty black hole of understanding. 300, Marcus finally stammered. It wasn't even a word. You were fighting over the crumbs, I said, my voice final. You were so desperate to steal the scraps from my plate. You never realized I owned the entire bakery. You were right about one thing, Mother. We do have nothing. We have nothing in common. We are not family. You are just two people I used to know. I looked at them one last time, defeated, broken, annihilated. Now please get off my property. The police are on their way to remove you for trespassing. They should be here in about, 30 seconds. I turned my back on them. I did not look back. I walked up the long curving driveway, and I could hear my father's weak, pathetic cry, "Amara, wait. Please wait." I walked into my house. I closed the heavy door, and I locked it. I was finally and completely free. I didn't stay to watch the police arrive. I didn't need to. As I turned my back on them and walked up the long driveway, I could hear the faint approaching wail of sirens. I heard my mother Brenda let out one last animalistic shriek. It was not a name. It was just a sound of pure bottomless loss. It was the sound of her entire world and her last hope vanishing right in front of her. I walked into the house. The heavy polished door closed with a soft final click. The silence inside was immediate and peaceful. I walked to the main security panel by the door, the one that showed the camera feed from the gate. I could see them. Marcus standing like a stone statue, gray and hollow. Brenda still crumpled on the pavement outside the bars. I pressed the button for the security office. "This is Ms. Jenkins." "Yes, Ms. Jenkins," a professional voice replied. "The two individuals trespassing at the main gate, Marcus and Brenda Jenkins. The police are arriving now. Please meet them and provide any assistance they need to formally remove them from the premises." "Right away, Ms. Jenkins." "And one more thing," I said, my voice perfectly steady. "Please put a permanent flag on their names and their images. They are never to be permitted on this property or any property associated with the Bishop Trust ever again, under any circumstances." "Understood, Ms. Jenkins. They will be permanently barred." I cut the feed. I didn't want to see their faces ever again. Later that evening, the house felt different. It felt lighter. The ghosts of their greed had been exorcised. I poured a glass of water and walked into my grandfather's study. I stood for a long time just looking at the portrait of him and Big Mama painted on their 50th anniversary. They were both smiling and their eyes were so full of life and quiet, knowing intelligence. "I cleaned the house, Pop," I whispered. "It's clean now." I sat down at his desk. My desk. I looked at the stack of proposals Mr. Harrison and I had been reviewing. The projects my grandparents had been passionate about, the ones they were planning to fund before they died. I picked up the top one. The West Atlanta Urban Renewal Project. A $50 million initiative to build new community centers, libraries, and affordable housing. My father in his pastor days had always tried to get on the board of this project to get his angel fund involved. My grandfather had always quietly blocked him. I picked up my personal phone. I dialed a number from my new contacts. "Governor's office." "Yes, hello. This is Amara Jenkins. May I please speak with the governor? He's expecting my call." A moment later, his voice, smooth and political, came on the line. "Ms. Jenkins, what a pleasure. I was so glad to hear you'd be taking over your grandparents' philanthropic work." "Governor," I said, my voice warm but firm. "Thank you for taking my call. I've spent the week reviewing the West Atlanta project. The Bishop Family Trust is in. We will be funding the initiative, the full $50 million. There was a sharp, stunned intake of breath on the other end. "Ms. Jenkins, Amara, that's transformative. God, that's incredible. Your grandparents would be so proud." "I believe they would," I said. "However, Governor, there is one small condition. It is non-negotiable." "Anything," he said quickly. "Anything at all." I pulled up the project's board member list on my computer. I see that Pastor Marcus Jenkins is still listed as an honorary board member. There was a sudden stiff silence on the line. "Ah," the governor said, his voice cautious. "Yes. An unfortunate situation that, given the recent news, we were in the process of reviewing. My condition for the $50 million grant," I said, cutting him off cleanly, "is that his name be permanently and publicly removed from this project and any other city project he is associated with before we wire the funds. The Bishop Trust cannot and will not be associated with a man facing multiple indictments for embezzlement and fraud. His removal must be total and it must be final." The pause was shorter this time. The calculation was quick. "Consider it done, Ms. Jenkins. I'll have his name expunged from the charter by morning. It was an oversight." "Wonderful," I said, smiling faintly. "I'm so glad we're in agreement. Please have your people send the revised paperwork to Mr. Harrison. We'll wire the first installment tomorrow." I hung up the phone. I looked back at the portrait. My father had spent his entire life building a hollow kingdom out of prestige and lies, and with one phone call I had just quietly and completely erased it. That was the true power. Not just having the money, but using it to do the good they had only pretended to. The house was clean, and I was finally home. They say that blood is thicker than water, but they don't tell you that sometimes that blood is toxic. They don't tell you that family is just a word, and that true belonging is a choice. It's an action. It's showing up. My family, Marcus, Brenda, and Jamal, they taught me that lesson through their cruelty. And my grandparents, Elias and Loretta, they taught it to me through their wisdom. My family called me the black sheep for my entire life. They saw it as an insult. They saw me as the lesser one, the charity case, the girl in the corner. They never realized that while they were busy polishing their own images, my grandparents were quietly nurturing that black sheep, feeding her, training her, and sharpening her teeth. They didn't want a sheep. They wanted a wolf. And when the time came, the wolf was all that was left. The sweetest revenge isn't screaming or fighting. It's not about dragging your enemies down into the mud with you. The sweetest, most profound revenge is living a life of such undeniable success, such quiet, unshakable power, that their entire existence becomes irrelevant. It's about using the power they tried to steal from you to build something beautiful. It's about taking the very stones they threw at you and using them to build your foundation. They tried to erase me. They tried to steal my past and my future. But in the end, all they did was clear the path. They removed themselves from my life and gave me the greatest gift of all, the freedom to become the woman my grandparents always knew I could be. I am not defined by their greed. I am defined by my grandparents' love and by the work I will do in their name. Have you ever been the black sheep in your own family? Have you ever felt underestimated, overlooked, or undervalued by the very people who were supposed to support you? I want to hear your story. Let me know in the comments below what you've overcome. Your story is a testament to your strength, and you never know who else needs to hear it. If my journey, my story of finding my power resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Share this with anyone at all, who needs to be reminded that they are not alone. Share it with anyone who needs to hear that their family's opinion does not define their destiny. Remember, your worth is not a number in a bank account, and it is certainly not decided by those who refuse to see it. Your value is inherent. It is in your resilience. It is in your quiet strength. It is in your ability to survive, to endure, and to build a life that is authentically yours on your own terms. Thank you for listening.